This reading meditation is going to explore the connections between reading and writing. So, if you want to pause the video here, you can run and grab a book to hold during this practice. I would recommend a book that you've read more than once, something that you would call your favorite book. Or if you are working on a writing project, if there's a book that's close to the kind of project you want to be making, that sort of models the end product a little, that's also a great book to go grab right now. The other thing you may want to have is something to write on, just in case any ideas come up that you want to jot down for later. So, for this practice, once you have your book, we're going to start by exploring the connection between the breath and the body. We'll also be exploring connections between our internal and external worlds, our thoughts and the author's thoughts, and also what we want to write with what we like reading. So to begin with, we'll just start by tuning in to this present moment. Just become aware of anything that's happening in your environment right now. Any sights. You can let your gaze become soft and try to hold everything, even the stuff in your periphery, instead of focusing on the book right away. You can also explore whatever sounds are happening right now. Maybe you can hear yourself breathing. And if there are any smells or tastes happening, you can become aware of those. Now we'll try to keep holding all this, but also include body sensations. Whatever you're feeling right now. In your seat, in your spine, which we want to have nicely stacked, allowing those natural curves to form, and rest lightly on top of a neutral pelvis. We can relax the face. There's no need for any expressions right now. And we can tune into the feeling of our breath in the body in this moment. You can feel how the breath fills up the chest and gives the sensation of the belly filling, even though there aren't any lungs there. We can feel the air as it passes through our nose or our mouth. And we can feel the soft gradient that's created between the outside and the inside. There will be areas of greater sensation, but there is a drop-off happening where you lose the sense of feeling in your body of the breath. And also when it leaves the body, there is a gradient of feeling to not feeling. Now we can turn to our actual book and just look over the cover of it. Do this softly. You don't have to focus on any one detail. And I'm going to begin flipping through pages. And again, I'm not reading this right now because this is a meditation on a book. What I'm doing is connecting my breath to this flipping of the pages, so I can lift it on the in-breath and rest the page that I'm turning on the out-breath. It doesn't have to be slow or fast. I just want to tune into how I'm breathing right now. Connect that and use that to make a connection between this present moment, my breath, my body, and this book. Sort of folding it into my existence so that it's not just a separate object, this book that normally rests on my shelf. Right now it's part of me. As it's always been part of me since I've had this book since I was a child, and my father had it since he was a child. Now, as I'm flipping through pages, I might become aware of some feelings being evoked. There are some pictures in this book that I've tried to copy as a kid or even later as an adult. There are some emotions that certain words will spark. In the case of this book, there's a sort of bittersweet emotion that arises in me. One of longing and beauty, and I don't know if it's sorrow. I guess it is. There are some sad parts in this book, but they are sad and beautiful. The kind of sad that makes you feel like life is beautiful. It's a pretty heavy book for a kid's book. And as I'm flipping through, I might become aware of some thoughts being evoked. There were some lessons that I learned from this book and relearned later on as an adult, since there are parts that you see one way as a child and one way later as an adult. Now your book might evoke different feelings and emotions and thoughts. Perhaps your book gave you some feeling of emotional catharsis, like you realized something that let you let go of something you were holding on to. Or maybe your book sparked some great epiphany. You realized something wonderful and true and wise. Or maybe it just entertained you, and that's fine. That's perfectly good and what a book should be doing as its first job. Whatever that is, we're going to become aware of this now, just to connect to why this book made any impact it did on you, and how that impact was felt on a feeling, thinking, or maybe even a spiritual level. All of these are ways that books can affect our psyche. And perhaps they were things that we carried into other parts of our life. How did these emotions and thoughts find their way into your life, your relationships, your work, maybe even the way you write if you're a writer? So you can take a bit more time to meditate on that connection between your emotions and thoughts and how this book affected your psyche. And then how in turn you took that and had that affect your life. Now, we'll just reconnect softly the breath to this book, to this present moment, the internal and the external. The soft gradient your breath makes as it enters and leaves the body. The soft gradient of connection you have just feeling this object in your hands. The connection between you turning these pages and your breath. And the connection between your internal and external views or experiences, and the soft gradient that happens when something like this enters your psyche and then comes back out into your life, perhaps more than once if you've read it more than once. The magic of reading and books is a sort of telepathy. You're transferring thoughts from one mind to another, from one psyche to another. And through that, we can entertain, comfort, teach, we can impart lessons from our own life, help people let go of past hurts or understand why things happened. And we can explore new worlds, places we haven't been, places that don't exist, or that do, but only in this place. And those thoughts, those stories, those characters, those lessons, those worlds don't just exist in this book anymore. When you read it, it becomes part of your mind, your thoughts, your psyche, your worlds. The author may have had a very different experience in writing this book than you have in reading it. But you are connected to this author, who might be long gone in the case of mine, but their thoughts are still here and are connected to mine. These characters that lived in their mind, in their psyche, now live in mine too. So I have a connection to this person, to their inner world, as they have to my inner world. And this inner world of theirs was defined and affected by the external world. Again, there's less a separation than maybe a soft gradient between these things. But the world that they grew up in affected their thoughts and their psyche, and this book that has recorded their thoughts and their worlds. And as it has passed into my psyche, it also has affected my world. It has changed how I act or think or feel in certain relationships or in doing certain things. Our internal and external worlds are more a series of relationships than they are separate things. So as I continue flipping through and continue to connect each turn of the page with each soft breath, I'm going to let my mind wander over those relationships, my internal and external worlds, the author's internal and external worlds, and those connections and relationships that have been formed across time and space through the magic of books. Now, before connecting this book to something I might want to write, I'm just going to tune back into the breath, this moment, my body sensations. I'm going to check in and see if my posture has changed at all, if I've scrunched up as I might tend to do sometimes, or started leaning back a little too far, and just come back to something nice and stacked, balanced, neutral, stable, with a soft gaze down at this book that I'm still flipping through, with a connection to my breath. If at any point during this you reach the end of your book, just go the other way. We're not reading this again. We're just flipping through to connect with this. Since we've read it before, we'll make connections with the story by simply flipping through it. Even if you're doing this with an e-reader, you still have a connection to this story through the last time you read it. And you can reconnect with that just by tuning in and flipping through and taking your time with it. If nothing's coming immediately, or you're not getting as complete or full of a picture as you expect, just be patient. It'll come when it comes. If you don't find what you were looking for in this session, remember you can always do this again. But to explore taking lessons from this book that you can use in your own writing, we're just going to keep flipping through and thinking of those thoughts and feelings and emotions that this book stirred up in your psyche. And you can connect that to different parts of the story. Was it the world that pulled you in and made you want to explore? Was it a character who became like an imaginary friend, teaching you or showing you things that sparked your imagination? Were there events or points in the plot that changed your worldview or taught you something or entertained you? Or were there ideas or concepts or morals that were imparted through this work that have grown in the garden of your psyche? Have those flowered into something else in the time since you've read this? Have they become something that you would want to share with others? Or do they need a little bit more time to grow? Are there seeds here that you can take and plant and let them start growing while you work on something? Even if you're going through the first draft of a writing project, you can let these seeds grow, and you can always add them to a rewrite or a second drafting. A lot of writing is rewriting, so you can come back to this practice and take maybe another book or other works and see if there are any seeds there that you would want to cultivate and add to your revisions. Any themes that came out in your first draft that you would want to add to a later redrafting. Another connection you can try and make is between the kind of reader you may be seeking and perhaps a time in your life when you were that person. In a non-fiction work, think of yourself before you had the knowledge you're trying to impart, and make a connection there, between your thoughts now and your thoughts then. Connect that to the readers whose thoughts you want to connect to through your work. In a work of fiction, what we're often doing is telling a story that helps us understand human nature or the world, because truth is stranger than fiction. Fiction often takes very strange and confusing parts of our world and our psyches and makes them more understandable. So, if you can connect that sort of lesson to the person you were before you learned it, and connect that to the person who you'd like to read this story, who you think it could help, or entertain, or teach, or any of the magical things that books can do. To end off this practice, I'm just going to flip back to the end and the back cover, no matter where I am right now, and just pause on this back cover for a second, taking in whatever I've learned from my flip through, and making note perhaps of anything I might want to explore again or in another session.
Remember that the only bad practice is the one you didn't do. So take a moment to feel some gratitude for the chance to practice today and for the efforts you put into it. Until next time.